I'm Mariel Hemingway and my partner, Melissa Yamaguchi. We are here with Out Comes the Sun podcast number 8, I think. And this is Daisy, just in case she whines or does something. That's a dog sitting in my lap. If you're not looking at something, you're just listening to this podcast. Anyway, today we are just going to have a conversation, Melissa and I, because we like to kind of assess what we've been doing and who we've been talking to, and actually we like to talk about what we've been talking about because we speak every single morning, and kind of the update in the world and how we're seeing it, and really today we were so struck by some young people in our lives, both of us, that have really been suffering, and it's like the question is, what do you do? So Melissa, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about what this issue is. I think that kids are suffering right now and they don't know where to turn.
Sure. And as you and I were speaking this morning, and I'll share with our audience that we often think of mental challenges and the stressors of life as it relates to adulthood. Your property taxes, your taxes, your if you're going to get a raise, how your relationship's going, how your kids are doing in school, whatever the pileup of adulthood is, adulting. And we often equate that only to being a bigger problem for a bigger human, an older
Right.
human. But what we're missing gravely is the gaps of our kids, and they're in segments, right? So it's the teenage years and college years, which I'll put in with the latter teens, and then we've got our middle school age kids, and then we've got the little ones.
Yeah.
And what I'm finding in a lot of the stuff that I'm researching and hearing firsthand from people, and I know you hear just as much, if not more than I, is that there's this feeling of as we've alluded to in a couple of our podcasts, of shame, and I don't want to burden my parents with what I'm going through, and they would be better off without me. And if they don't know where to turn and how to handle these suicide ideations, then they will turn to self medication,
Yeah.
whether it's through the drinking or the drugs,
Right.
or some other form of addiction. And so I've recently been listening to some podcasts where younger people in our cultural awareness have been coming out and really speaking about the pain that they're going through in their lives, and what they've done, what type of therapy they've used to get them to a space of wellness,
Right.
a space of healing, or on the
Right.
road to healing. And so I think what's important about this is that younger people, because we are such a social network of awareness, whether it's an influencer or it's a so-called celebrity by way of television, movie, or the arts.
Right.
When we see those people coming forward and saying, I too have an issue, and I realized, as to quote one young woman, I realized that I was placing the power of happiness in my life in the hands of everybody else, whether it was my family, even though I love them, whether it was the people who were hiring me for a job, or it was the boyfriend at the time.
Yeah.
I was putting all my happiness in their hands, and I realized I was taking away my very own power. And it
Absolutely.
wasn't until I learned how to put that power back in my own hands. And as I listened to this young gal speak, I realized such an innocent, seemingly simple statement to make that seems like, well, of course you're going to put the
Right.
power, you're not going
Right.
to let everyone else. But it's such an easy thing to do when we're constantly looking for the likes on social media and the
Absolutely.
acceptance and approval, right? So I think that that really was an important hurdle that I watched this young gal make in her ability to share, her willingness to share. And then this morning I saw another young woman speaking about how she had been taking Xanax, and it wasn't until she got off of Xanax that she thinks that her life was saved, because she couldn't stay on top of the thoughts in her head.
Right.
And she admittedly got onto Xanax because it was the thing that was being handed out, and it was the thing that people were doing to lose weight, to look a certain way, to hit a barometer. And so she had to get off of that to save her life. And as I shared with you, I have a dear friend whose a child has been going through horrific pain, PTSD, trauma. And so her inability to handle it for some reason, and I don't know this, I'm not the expert here, her inability to handle that somehow clouded her judgment on how she should handle it.
Right.
So she's trying to take matters in her own hand. However, whatever forms of healing she thinks she's going to try, and none of them are working. So it's
Well,
this
also, I think,
lost.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I
No,
also
no.
think that what she's getting is information that is kind of old. Like, I think when you go to a emergency room for a mental health problem, they don't know what to
Hmm.
do. So they'll direct you as best they can. No, nothing against them,
Yeah.
but I want to go back. I want to go back to what you were first talking about, the girl who said, I put my happiness in the hands of everybody else, right? I put,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
welcome to the first 40 years of my life. Everybody else had the power to make me feel a certain way, right? It was always in everybody
Yeah.
else's hands. I was always looking for a doctor, a healer, a guru, a this, a that, or whatever. Because in my own search in my life, because mental health was such a big issue, I was so
Yeah.
frightened. I was so afraid that I was going to either be an addict like my mom, dad, and sisters, an addict to alcohol, to drugs, to whatever, or uh, or I was going to wake up with some sort of mental illness and I didn't even know how to handle it. And so I was on a constant search, whether it was through lifestyle choices, literally diets, because I had body dysmorphia and I felt that my body wasn't good enough and stuff like that. And I realized that that was just trauma that I had
Hmm.
placed in this inappropriate place, but that's what we often do. We often put it into a place where we can handle it, deal with it. But I was going back to that. I was constantly looking for a doctor, healer, somebody to say, here's what you need to do, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, right? And then that led to, and you know this story, and that led me to going to India. I was 45. Jeez, how can that be so long ago now? But anyway,
Just
so I
yesterday.
read just
Yesterday.
yesterday. I went to India and I met His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and I've told this story before, and I was just happy to be there. There's these wonderful, amazing people in the room that were very, very important and promising people who were had important questions to ask His Holiness the Dalai Lama about, like, world peace and stuff. I was just happy to be there, but actually I got to sit right down next to His Holiness. He actually motioned for me to sit next to him in this little armchair in this little room in Dharamsala, India. Anyway, I was just like thrilled to be there, excited that I was asked to sit next to him, and I kept looking at him and smiling and giggling, and he would giggle back at me and whatever. And 2 hours went by, and there's two really important things about this that are relevant to what you had said, believe it or not. uh, Number one was watching somebody so at peace with himself and
Hmm.
and in complete acceptance of what is, watching him listen to these people in the room, listen with such intent, as though
Hmm.
nobody else were in the room except the person who was speaking to him, right? So that was number one. And then number two, which came as it was about to wrap up, and I'm like, I'm still excited because he keeps looking at me and laughing, and then I giggle, and then I started to get up because everybody was going to leave, and he put his hand on my hand and he looked me in the eye, and to this day it still makes me cry, and he said, "You're okay." And I was like, "Whoa." No, and it wasn't a psychic moment. He wasn't saying, "Oh,
Right.
I see into your future." He was just, he felt the energy of my desperation, my life of looking and searching and looking into the eyes of His Holiness. Are you going to give me an answer? Are you going to tell me I'm going to be all right? Are you going to
Hmm.
give me the solution to my fear? And I was depressed most of my life and didn't even know it. Anyway, it was that moment of clarity and understanding of him just saying, "You're okay," that I realized, and it was an unfolding. It wasn't an aha moment, but it was an unfolding of realizing I was indeed okay. And what I love about that young girl saying, I had to find my own happiness, not put it in the hands of other people. What I needed
Hmm.
to do was go, oh, wait, all those healers, all those doctors, all those people outside me are not going to define who I am. I have to do that. And I think that when we get back to kids, there has to be, we have to come up with something where we're educating them on how to handle their feelings and also educating them on the feelings of, I can't handle this life anymore. I don't want to be here. And understanding that that feeling eventually is going to change, right? Because with
Yes,
a
yes.
child or a young person, not even a child, maybe a young teenager, whatever, or even a young adult, they don't have the life experience to know that, guess what? Probably tomorrow you're not going to feel this way. But when you're
That's right.
young, you're very present, which is the good news about being young. But you're also, you don't have this, this baggage of experience to say, you know what, I know this will shift. It's rough, and go out for a walk or a run, or you know what I'm saying. It's like,
Exactly. It makes me think of when you and I did a talk recently with Chase Hughes, and he talked about the past, present, and future self,
yes,
and understanding that you have to prioritize the needs of the future self over the whatever you're feeling today.
yes,
And it's that kind of it's a grown up version of delayed gratification, right? Put off
yes,
what you think you need today in order to serve the future you. And you said this power of putting it in other people's hands and how we have to educate, and we are I am so proud of American education. I hail from many generations of educators here in the United States, so I'm very proud of our American education. But I think we have become not become throughout our time, we have failed in giving our youth outlets at school, and so many lines are blurred now that nobody really knows where to turn. And I
yes,
want to bring up you, speaking of like working with our youth in the community, whether it's through schools or it's through community groups or whether it's through the local church or the YMCA, whatever it is.
right,
You work with a group out of Idaho
yeah.
called Optum, an insurance company, and they're doing some pretty amazing things.
Oh,
And I think it's one of the reasons
incredible.
you signed up with. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it was so funny because I don't know if you reached out or they reached, I think they reached out to us, to
Hmm.
have me do something, right? And I was so
Yep.
excited because, I'm an Idaho girl. I grew up here. My mother is a native Idahoan. So I was super excited to help my little, my little state, right? And
Hmm.
it's a very poor state. There's a lot of wealthy people here, but there's there the differentiation,
Disparity.
the disparity is
Yeah.
so huge. There's a lot of poor people that can't, they don't have the insurance, but Optum is really put on the forefront. How can we help these unfortunate, people that are unfortunate? And they've really focused on behavioral health, which I think is so incredibly important. They realize the importance of doing that, especially now since, COVID and the pandemic was such
Hmm.
a, it 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 ruined a lot of kids' lives are still not the same. They haven't come back. And you know this very well. I went to Shippensburg, Virginia, and spoke at a
Yes.
college. Now, it was set
Yep.
up prior to the pandemic, but then after the pandemic, kids were too scared to come in person. I mean, I
That's
think
right.
probably it's better now, but it was still this spring, and they were living on campus, but doing all their classes online still, right? There's still this fear,
Yep.
and that's just, well, first of all, it's just horrifying. I just want to see kids getting out there and building their immune system and doing all kinds of things. That's a whole other conversation, but it's very sad. And Optum here in Idaho is really taking it on. They really what I love is that they've really taken it on as a lifestyle thing. So I do PSAs for them. I do one for each season, and we address eating the right food, eating good real food,
Yes.
addressing, getting exercise, getting sunshine, simple things that sound like, it's like when we talked about the seven doctors. The
Yeah,
reason why
absolutely.
I talk about that again is because I believe that the head is not separate from the body. It's all intertwined. Our relationship to the brain has everything to do with what we're doing in the body, and that's part of the
Hmm.
education too. And nobody is teaching our kids how to live life. They're all technical as all get out and can make a video that'll knock your socks off and make you laugh or
Right.
whatever. But nobody's telling them, like, and we all go through it, when the days get colder in the fall and it gets darker, what's happening. They don't know what's happening. We do. We've had many seasons that we've gone through, but they don't
Right.
know. There's no knowledge of, like, what to do, and it feels as though, because of their hormones and all that stuff, that it's so big, right? So how
That's
do you,
exactly
and
right.
how do you, how do you address that? How do you address that with humans who are becoming adults, but they're not really adults yet? And it's just, I don't know. It's a kind of it's
It makes
overwhelming.
me think of, remember when you and I had spoken one time about at the LA Unified School District, the kids went on strike. We had talked about this, I think, in
Yes.
one of our first podcasts, and the kids went on strike, and they really were requesting, demanding help. They wanted counselors to talk to them, and when they were questioned, what is it that you're looking for? They said somebody to listen.
Yes.
I mean, it's, you talk about
Yes.
simplicity. We complicate things. These kids just want someone to listen to them. And my son's in school at the University of Boulder, as you know, and he just wrote a paper yesterday or 2 days ago for one of his classes on the social effects of COVID. He
Yeah.
graduated high school during COVID, and so
I
people
remember.
said,
I
"Oh, we
remember
missed out
so
on
well. It was
prom.
heartbreaking.
He missed out. Yeah, they missed out on everything." And he wasn't lamenting or crying in his soup over missing out on prom. That's not who he is. But he was saying, "What a shift this has been, because now everyone was at home when they always look forward to going to school and seeing their buddies as they're walking in and yelling at each other across campus. They were now all relegated to their home, on their bed, or
Yeah.
at their desk on their computers." And so he wrote about it in one of his classes, and the social ramifications, as well as the personal effect. And I thought, isn't this amazing? We talk about present day events that will be spoken about throughout history for years to come, for centuries to
Absolutely.
come, and the effect that it has on us. We still don't know all of the effects that the shutdown had on the mental on the psyche of our youth. Even
Yeah.
even as young as kindergartners, we do know, we've heard stories about how kindergartners are like puppies, like your little puppy, and they need to socialize.
Yeah.
We all do, but in particular, these little bitty ones, they
Absolutely.
flourish under socialization. So what was happening to the babies when they're looking on a little screen, right?
Right.
But I think the most important thing, and you've done so much work that I think is worth us sharing with the audience, about really speaking to groups of kids who have been affected by, whether it's drug abuse, their own or those they love, or it's through suicide ideation. They're those their own or those of their friends who have died by suicide. You've spoken with them and talked about how the ripple effect, and that many of them, I remember you telling me one time you spoke to a group of kids who had zero idea that their friend was even contemplating or was even on the verge of suicide, because death by suicide was never something he'd spoken about, and never,
No.
he was always a happy-go-lucky guy. You
Yeah.
had spoken, so
And his family
the
was so shocked, and it wasn't like none of the family were at it. I mean, it was really a shocker. And that's what's daunting and frightening about this mental health crisis. And it really is a
yeah.
crisis, because
Hmm.
when and I was doing something for Time magazine at the time, and we were kind of trying to create a show. Anyway, it was during the pandemic, of course, and things got shut down for for all those reasons. but what was interesting was the interviews with some of the kids that were like just talking about their bodies and how horrible they felt being bullied, feeling isolated, the pressures of work, of when you've got scholastic pressure, when you as a student or get you've got a heavy workload
Hmm.
and you can't handle it
Yep.
and you don't know how to address it, and you've got parents who are, relying on you to get your work done and whatever. And that pressure becomes very huge. And there's a lot of times when suicide is happening, suicide ideation and actual somebody might take their life who looks the perfect kid, right? Great
Right.
athlete, great student, this and that, popular, got a boyfriend or a girlfriend, whatever. But they don't realize that the anxiety level, which they're not speaking about, is so tremendous inside of them. And, like I just, I want to do something for these kids. I want them to know that there's something out there, right? There's
Hmm.
something out there. There's a way to reach out completely. There are some hotlines and stuff that are wonderful. Like in LA, they have a wonderful hotline where kids speak to the kids, right? They've been trained
Yeah.
and they've gone through their own issues. And so they speak to the kids. And kids,
Important.
they open up. And it's true. They just want to be heard. Nobody's
They need to be
listening.
heard.
And that was the thing about his holiness. Like, there I was, a middle-aged woman or whatever, and he was listening. It's so powerful. My grandfather talks about listening. He talked about listening back in the 40s, right? He said, most people don't listen. Most people don't know how. Everybody's planning their next thought, and as
Huh,
parents,
that's right.
and it's not even, it's not a mean thing, but as parents, you want to give solutions. You're like, I want to fix, instead of just sitting back and not giving a solution and just being there to be a sounding board. How powerful that can be for anybody, but especially a kid, just to be heard.
Yes.
You're listening to me. Oh my God, I matter. I matter to somebody, and I can be heard. And it can be that simple. That can be the turning point that will enable them to get a little bit of help, because they were able to tell a bit of their story or their anxiety about it. But if it's left inside, that anxiety becomes so big that they honestly believe, okay, I can't take this anymore. I want out. And that
We got
is
to start.
that's just not okay, in my
No, I'm
opinion.
sorry. I'm sorry. I
No.
didn't mean to cut you
Oh
off,
no,
Mariel.
please.
We've got to start by teaching our kids that it's okay to fail.
Yes.
It's okay to fail. It's okay to fail. It's not the end of the world. And what happens is we put so much pressure on the trophies and this is not me. This is not me making some political comment. This is just that we're not letting our kids know that, okay, it stings. It hurts a little bit when something doesn't go your way, but we keep moving because a lot of that anxiety is coming from. Remember, another thing that was recently said by Chase is, depression comes from unmet expectations.
Yes.
And a lot of anxiety comes from the fear of not meeting expectations, I believe,
Yes.
to kind of piggyback on Chase, is that these if I don't get into the school of my choice, if I don't make that SAT grade, if I don't get accepted by this guy or this gal, this person I'm interested in, whatever that pressure is, the failure is feels so much more monumental. Now it has for years.
Yeah, it has.
My dad talked to me about not getting a yes from a girl when he asked her on a date and how he was devastated. But I said, what did my grandparents say? What did your parents say when you didn't get what you wanted? Pick yourself up. You can do it. Pick yourself up. You've got this. Keep moving. When now there's a bit of a, oh, let me see who I need to talk to. I'm going to go
Yeah.
talk to the teacher. What do you mean you didn't make the
Yeah.
team?
Yeah.
Let me go fight on your behalf. Let me show you. And what I've been reading about that, what that does, we think as parents that we're protecting our babies by fighting for them. Listen, I'm the first one to pick up a bat with nails in it and take anyone to the head who's going to come after my kids.
I,
I'm
I know you
ferocious.
will.
But I
True.
mean, I've also had to know when to pull back and let my kids, because if I jumped in every time, I'm secretly telling them that they're not capable of taking care of themselves, and
Well, and
therefore they
also they
must
don't
have
learn
me.
the tools. I mean,
They don't.
and that is failing upward. That's also learning how to be social, how to work out your issues. I mean, how often do you hear of, please don't tell my parents because they don't want it to become a thing.
All the
Um,
time. Yep.
yeah, and then there's that fine balance. If somebody's being bullied, like where do you draw that? Like
Yep.
where do you need to step in? It's a delicate thing, but we have gotten so that we placate so much that I think that that's why they're in this place where they can't take any kind of failure as they get older, and they're no longer being babied all the time, or their hands being held. Because
That's
I
true.
think, and maybe this is super unpopular. I don't know. I'm going to just say it, but like not giving everybody a trophy on the soccer field, even if you like. I'm sorry. Then where's the competition? I think that
No,
competition
the guy,
teaches
the guy
you.
who gets the 12th place trophy when he comes home.
Yeah, I mean it's a
I
little.
know, I get it.
It reminds me. I went to ski camp when I was like 11, and I went to ski camp in Grand Targhee, Wyoming, which is really close to Idaho. And it was ski camp, and it was like in the summer. We were all wearing bathing suits. It was in June. It was bizarre. But anyway, and I was racing, and I was the only girl at this camp, at this ski camp. I'm 11 years old. So I won all the things. But the truth was, I felt kind of stupid because what did I win? I was the only one in the flipping game, so I got all these trophies. Number one, anyway. I don't think that taught me anything, but anyway, it was fun.
I'm number
But
one.
I'm number one. But I do think that we need to. I think we got to get back to some old values of like just competition is good for building character, and it doesn't mean you're a loser if you lose. It just means, hey, you didn't win, and that's
I
okay.
didn't win this
It's
time. Yeah.
not putting pressure on them and saying, oh my god, or shaming them because they didn't perform. It's just this, we've gotten so that we're so extreme on the other side that's why I think these kids come up against traumatic situations that they cannot
Yep.
handle, right?
That's
Because they
exactly right.
never had to handle them when they were little, right? They never did because
It's too much.
it's
They
too
don't have the
much.
tools. There's too much coming at them. There's too much information. There's too much. It's constant. It's just a constant flood of opinions and ideas coming, whether it's on TikTok or Snapchat or wherever they are. They're kind of veering away from some of the platforms that the adults are using now. They got their own, but it's constant, and it's coming at them in nanoseconds. So
Yeah.
they can't process it, and then they don't have the tools to process if they could. So it's, I think that, I'll be excited. You and I are going to be bringing people on who can really address this,
Yeah.
the needs of our youth, and what we have to do to prepare them, because they will be taking care of planet Earth and all of us in the years to come, and we need to help them and prepare them for that. So look forward. You've got a lot of connections in the industry of mental wellness and well-being, and we'll be able to bring on some of these connections soon.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, Optum was, I mean, God bless them, this little state, that they just decided they were going to take this on, because not everybody is doing it. I mean,
That's right.
people are talking about mental health. There's no more issue about like, oh, we need to talk about it. People are talking about it, and people know it's an issue. It's just
Mm-hmm.
about finding those solutions. And also, again, and I'm going to drive this home because I always believe that it's important when I talk about the seven doctors, lifestyle, and teaching
Yes.
kids that lifestyle is important. What happened to going to PE? I guess that's not even in school anymore. When we went to school,
I don't
we
know.
went to PE. I mean, I love there's this Instagram that I follow. It's like, if you grew up in the 70s and 80s, right? And they were showing the rope climb, right? And a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
are on there for fitness, but our kids are missing a whole piece of that childhood thing that was, it was kind of a pain, but it was great. You remember? Because I think that
Listen,
the meme is like, remember when you used to climb the rope for the president? Because you were led to believe
Yeah.
that the president
Yeah.
knew if you won.
Yeah.
On every, in every elementary school
Yeah.
in America, he was like, he was giving you the
Yeah.
thumbs up.
Well, I blame the deterioration of PE on my fifth grade teacher, my fifth grade PE teacher, whose name who shall remain nameless, who used to come to PE class with her coffee cup in fifth grade that said "Life sucks,"
Oh, wow.
and stand before us with her cigarette breath
Oh,
and say,
geez.
"You kids gonna run today or what?" She did. I think she killed PE. I think she killed it. So the whole America just said, "That's it.
That's
Wrap
it.
it up."
No more. No more PE for those
Nope.
people anymore.
That's it.
That's hilarious.
That's
It's hilarious. But we have to get back to the lifestyle stuff. We got to teach our kids that, like, going outside and playing and being imaginative, because,
yep.
as great as TikTok and all these things are, and you can make funny videos, going outside in nature as a kid is super important for the development of your imagination, your ability,
Oh yeah.
also your ability to be alone. That's important. Kids don't know how to engage by themselves.
Comfortably. That's right.
And I remember when my girls were growing up, and they were kind of just at the precipice of all this happening. But I remember there was a day when they came to me and were like, "We don't have any play dates." I was like, "What?" I said, "Just get outside. Stop it." It's so mean. Stop it. Because I was like that parent that was like, "Oh, I used to go to, school in the snow, barefoot or something." But, I lied. But,
Well, our kids movement is a big thing, and moving the
yes.
body. And you're right,
Oh,
moving, keeping it moving, keeping those big muscles in action.
well, and if they're eating a ton of sugar or processed foods and that is not good for them, and sitting down and not moving, what is that doing to the psyche? What is that doing to your hormone levels? What is that doing to you?
Right.
Except creating, childhood obesity, which is insane. But also, nobody's kind of relating that to their mental health problems, right?
Right.
If you're eating that way, you're not going to be balanced. You're going to be anxious. You're going to be depressed. I mean, all of these, so they all always work together,
Yep. Absolutely. And that's the seven doctors at play. That's the mind, body, spirit connection that we talk about on every podcast.
Yeah.
And one size does not fit all.
No.
So we will be bringing people on to introduce parents and kids alike to options. And that's going to be a really, they're all important. Every podcast we do, dare I say, is wildly important.
Yeah.
But it's vital that
It
we
is.
really allow people to see options for their kids.
Absolutely. Well, this was great. It was a wonderful conversation. I love that we talk every morning and that we always are like, how can we figure this out? So thank you for,
Yes, thank you.
having a conversation with me today. And we appreciate
And
you.
I have a trophy here for you somewhere if you just give me a minute.
And thank you everyone for tuning in this week. We're excited always, and we're going to have a wonderful guest next week, and we are grateful to you, and keep the conversation going, and keep looking towards your 7 doctors, which are available to you, and towards making your life healthier, happier, and more balanced. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Out Comes the Sun. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, on Apple, and on YouTube. And you can donate to the Mariel Hemingway Foundation at the marielhemingwayfoundation.org. And I want to spell Hemingway for you, HEMINGWAY.org. I only say that because a lot of people put 2 M's, and that just won't work. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, you can go to the donate button at the bottom, and it will take you right to a link with the QR code. And if you go to marielhemingway.org, you can also press the donate button and be able to donate to the foundation, which is designed to help guide people towards finding the right solutions for their mental health issues. That is my goal. I'm just trying to raise money so I can come up with an app and a website that has all the information you could possibly want to know about mental health and where to go. But we are in the process of making that happen, and your donation means so much to us. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.